Obviously, in a video game, there are conditions to meet to win, goals to complete, but sometimes we just like messing around, figuring stuff out. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 big brain experiments we try in games for no reason, part 2. Part 1 had a few things in it you might be interested if you want to go back and haven't seen it. We followed NPCs around in GTA, tried to make cars explode, combined powers to do crazy stuff in Breath of the Wild, pushed NPCs to their breaking point, made all the worst choices on purpose just to see what happens, left our character idle for a long time, made piles of bodies, provoked enemies to fight each other, and just all around tried to break the game completely. But stick around, we're about to hit a very big brain batch of experiments, starting off with number 10, mess with stalker pathing. Now, just any game with a guy who stalks you. At a certain point, you just want to test the limits of what you can get away with. Sometimes that's by them getting stuck in the environment, finding a spot that can just never get you. But even more fun is to try to get their AI pathing to fail them. Like, they're supposed to be terrifying, unstoppable enemies, but if you find the right door and stand there, they'll just never get you. They'll get stuck in a loop of trying to chase you and giving up because you're walking in and out of a safe room. Aw, dang, he's in that room. I can't go in that room. I'm not sure why, but I can't. It completely undermines the threat these guys are supposed to pose. But if you're at a point where you're doing this kind of stuff, that initial fear is probably past anyhow. At number 9, the time-tested covering things in explosives just to see what happens. An essential one that we didn't cover in the first list somehow. But I guess if that was the most extensive list ever made, we wouldn't be making another one. And quite frankly, it's fun to do that. But anyway, any game where you got like a timed or sticky explosive device, you gotta test out the limits. Usually that's by covering something like a car or statue or just something. Preferably something you know can move. But we don't restrict it to that always. Anyway, we just cover it in as many explosives as we can. If it's a car, we drive it around, or we just put as many bombs as we can in a single spot and detonate. It's fun when you send something flying. Frankly, that's always the best result. Large object that shouldn't be flying through the air. Now, there's some pretty funny stuff you can do depending on the game, like cover a soldier in proximity mines and watch them explode when they get close to anyone, or just completely cover an enemy vehicle with as many explosives as possible. Depending on the game, the reaction can be spectacular or honestly pretty underwhelming too. Sometimes it'll just break the game if you go too far with it. Impressive or not, it's just fun to put a whole hell of a lot of explosives on something. Like, it's pretty satisfying to see what happens usually.
Be careful.
At number 8, seeing if a game has fall damage, or rather, finding the highest point in a game and then jumping. This is an essential one we also missed on the first list. It's one of the things that's such a pointless big brain thing and sometimes does serve a purpose at times depending on how much jumping you're doing in a game. Sometimes it's good to note just how far you can fall before you die. Like in Skyrim, where fall damage increases dramatically after a certain threshold, or Halo, where it seems like fall damage works differently in every other game. Most of the time, if I'm jumping off something, it's not to better understand the game, it's just see the character splat on the ground, to be fair. Maybe the most famous example of this kind of cruelty towards a player character is from the original Tomb Raider. Once you've figured out how you could swan dive, you better believe you were climbing a ledge and diving headfirst off a rocky cliff for no good reason. When we're talking about fall damage, another thing we always like to do is check environmental damage too. Like if there's a campfire, I'm gonna stand in it. Is that lava? Better jump in to see if it's instant death or if I can survive for a while. Not a realistic action, but sometimes a realistic question to ask in a video game. It's really all about seeing what happens. A lot of games kind of disappointing when it comes to this stuff, but if you get a hilarious death animation or you can see some spectacular death from jumping off the highest point in the game, it's worthwhile. Absolutely. And number 7, checking if there is friendly fire. If you're playing an FPS game, your primary means of interacting with the world is a gun, right? The gun's pointing forward at all times, and mostly what you're doing in these games is shooting people, so why not shoot your allies also? It's almost always completely pointless. You usually just get a generic "you failed" message if you shoot somebody too much. Or even worse, the game might just straight up not let you even point your gun at allies. But there are a few games where friendly fire can lead to some pretty humorous results. Like Metal Gear Solid 3, if you shoot certain characters you're not supposed to, you get a message saying you created a time paradox because that character isn't supposed to die yet. Some games let you shoot allies, but you can't actually kill them, like in Gears of War. In those, you shoot them and they complain, but like you unload an entire clip into them, they don't die and they complain about it. It's great, actually. Rarely you get a game where there's just no rules. You can friendly fire to your heart's content. Specifically, I'm thinking of Half-Life and Doom 3, where allies are mostly completely expendable. You just shoot them if you want. Game doesn't care. Don't try to pull it off on Dark Souls NPCs, though. If you attack and kill them, they're gone for good. And that includes any shopkeepers that sell essential items. Once they're gone, they are no more. And there's nobody that replaces them. So if you're near an NPC in the Dark Souls games or adjacent ones, keep the fingers far away from the attack buttons, because one slip up, it can leave you without an essential NPC. And number 6 is shoot everything, just to see what environmental damage looks like. Similar to testing out friendly fire, this is one of the most fun things to do in a game. You shoot the walls, the floors, lamps, boxes, just random junk lying around, see what happens. Certain games have these great little details, like pretty much anything from Remedy, the developers of Max Payne and Control. Those games are filled with stuff you can smash and destroy, put bullet holes in stuff, effects depending on different surfaces. It's top notch as far as Control is really, really good about it too. It's fun enough with games where you can damage things, but this kind of thing's basically the whole point when it comes to games with fully destructible environments like Teardown, or to slightly lesser of an extent, Red Faction Guerrilla. Like all of the structures you can tear down in Red Faction Guerrilla. But it's really fun, like incredibly fun. Smashing stuff is kind of the best part of these games. One fun thing to do in more standard games is shoot walls and see how many bullet holes actually remain. Same goes with corpses. It can kind of be fun to see how many you can pile up in a single location before they start to disappear or slow down the game. Sometimes you get a game with just really impressive destruction effects. Most of the time you don't, but it's still a lot of fun to experiment and see what happens. And number 5, make really dumb stuff in custom menus, weaponsmiths, unit creators, stuff like that. When a game gives you the option to customize things, it's the player's right and privilege to make something totally hideous. That's half the fun of character creators. Yeah, a lot of people like making a really detailed character that resembles them or resembles what they want to look like or something like that. But a lot of the fun of a character creator is making a horrible goblin or some freak face just because. Along those lines, if a game gives you the chance to customize a vehicle, gun, species, whatever, one of the most fun things to do is to try to find a way to break them. Like in a wrestling game, making the most jacked up freak and having them beat up the scrawniest loser you can think of, just to see how much the game freaks out. Or make a gun that makes no sense at all in Metal Gear Solid 5. In games like Spore or Impossible Creatures, you can make some pretty impressively freakish and worthless creatures for that matter. Death would probably be a blessing for these abominations. Look at that guy. A recent game that lets you go wild making the worst pieces of junk possible is Sprocket, this indie game where you can design worthless pile of crap tanks. Seriously, the stuff you can do here is ridiculous because the game is so hardcore, it's honestly easier to make something worthless than it is to actually build a working tank. For people who love taking something that's completely good, perfectly fine, and ruining it, you can't go wrong here. And number 4 is causing traffic jams in open world games. Sure, it's fun to jump on NPCs and throw things at them and see what happens. But if you're playing an open world game, it can be even more entertaining to see what happens when you create a traffic jam. It's one of those things where you never know how the developer is going to deal with it. Like Cyberpunk 2077, everybody just kind of gets out of their car and stands there. Why, I thought if I got out of my car, something would change, and gosh darn it, I was wrong. Better stay here. I don't understand that logic. But the master of the open world genre, Rockstar, obviously knows how to create a proper traffic jam. If you block a road with your car, NPCs start shouting, getting out of their cars, throwing fits.
Would you mind getting the out of my way?
Some people even flip out and try to ram through the obstruction with their car. It's chaotic and it's beautiful. As far as NPC traffic reactions go, they don't get much better than this even now. Still, some games allow for some funny stuff either intentionally or unintentionally, and it's always fun to see just how the game's going to react to something as basic as parking your car in traffic. And number 3 is taking on enemies way higher level than you just to see if you can. For a regular gamer, seeing a big red skull next to an enemy's name is more than enough to, not do it until you're way better or higher level or whatever. But for the big-brained among us, it's not enough for the game to tell you shouldn't bother with this enemy yet. You have to test it out for yourself. Most of the time, game is right. There's a lot of times games just make an enemy that's way stronger than you not possible to beat. Like you have to level up just to take them on. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's possible through pure determination and struggle to take down an enemy you were not meant to fight at this point in the game. Even if you don't really get anything for it and there's like a dozen more of these guys you have to take on and continue, sometimes it's just satisfying to know that you can beat them, even though at the end of the day it wasn't really worth it. And number 2 is breaking out of bounds to explore. Probably one of the most fun things to do in games is get outside the area you're supposed to go and just explore. There's 2 main ways to do this, either through sequence breaking, made famous in games like Super Metroid, or by straight up clipping through the environment and getting outside the play area. There's a certain satisfaction to sequence breaking, where you make a specific jump or pull a little trick to get into an area of the game before you're supposed to. Some games are literally built for it, but most of the time developers don't account for sequence breaking, which can sometimes make a game crash or render it unwinnable. In those instances, there's really no good reason to sequence break, but sometimes you just have to. It's second nature to want to break free from the constraints and do things the game doesn't want you to, so why not? Clipping through walls is an even more extreme version of that. Instead of just getting to a place earlier than supposed to, you get to parts of the game you were really not supposed to go to. Like sometimes this can be as easy as putting it into a no-clip mode or a code or something, but a lot of newer games just try to do everything in their power to keep you inside the play area, but somebody always finds a way out. And finally, at number 1, doing the opposite thing that the game tells you. Speaking of doing things the game doesn't want you to do, I think we all like getting a little defiant. Games basically all tell you what to do nonstop. Would you kindly go blah blah blah? That's literally the whole point of BioShock. But sometimes you just want to go your own way and do the exact opposite of whatever someone tells you to do. They tell you to go somewhere, so you go somewhere else. That's the most basic example, but there's way more. Some games have this desire built into their DNA, like the Stanley Parable, where the entire game is about trying to do things the narrator doesn't want you to do. Or the memorable part of Black Ops Cold War, where you get narrated over during a dream sequence and you can ignore what the narrator says and just go in different directions. Those are built into the game, but in a lot of games it's not. Most of the time, if you refuse to do what the game wants, it'll either force you to do it anyway or fail the mission. Sometimes you might get a unique cutscene or something though. Like in a lot of RPGs with a lot of choices in them, the game actually changes the quest if you do the opposite of what people want. Because a lot of the quests have a secret timer, and if you don't do what people want, eventually the mission's just gonna fail. It's one of the simplest things to do in games, but it can lead to some surprising results. It's specifically big-brained because it's almost always pointless. Still, we do it anyway. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.